Hello fight fans, thanks for joining us at MMA Insider. Before we get rolling with today's news, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing. Now let's uncover the latest happenings in MMA. Starting off, Aljamain Sterling reacts to being the only UFC 300 winner to not get an Octagon interview. Next, Jorge Masvidal addresses Jake Paul over talk of a potential PFL fight. Lastly, Jamal Hill issues wild call-out after UFC 300 title loss to Alex Pereira. Former UFC bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling has weighed in on the decision to make him the only UFC 300 winner to not have an interview with Joe Rogan. Sterling earned a unanimous decision win in his UFC featherweight debut against Calvin Kattar during the UFC 300 prelims. He utilized his wrestling and timely striking to stifle Kattar over all 3 rounds. After getting his hand raised in the center of the octagon, Sterling was expected to have an interview with Rogan to talk about his performance. But he ended up being the only UFC 300 fighter not to have a post-fight Octagon interview as the promotion neared the start of the pay-per-view portion of the card. Sterling, who bounced back after a loss to Sean O'Malley at UFC 292, wishes it wasn't the odd man out. In a recent appearance on the MMA Hour, Sterling reacted to not having a moment on the mic at UFC 300. Here is what he said: "I don't want to say I was upset, but when I thought about it, it definitely sucked a little bit. Former champion, defended the belt 3 times, no interview, it's kinda sad." Former UFC welterweight contender Jorge Masvidal has some strong words for Jake Paul. Late last week, Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz were in Las Vegas to hold the first press conference for their fight. During the presser, Jake Paul was brought up, and both former UFC fighters quickly bashed him. Quickly, Jake Paul took to social media to respond, alleging that Dana White told Masvidal that he couldn't fight him. Furthermore, Jake Paul stated that he would offer Jorge $10 million to fight him in the PFL. Earlier today, Jorge responded to those comments on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani. There, Jorge utterly tore into Paul, confirming that the UFC vetoed him as an opponent due to the things he said about Dana White. Furthermore, Jorge slammed the YouTuber turned boxer for even bringing the PFL up. Here is what he said: "Listen, Jaka, the UFC doesn't like you. They said, we're not going to let you make money with this guy, because at the end of the day, we're partners. Me and Nate, we're gonna make money right now. You're talking about the PFL. Are you gonna do an MMA? Are you kidding me? You can't even box. I would kick your cap off your fragile body, you dumb Don't bring up MMA ever, you disrespectful piece of." Former UFC light heavyweight champion Jamal Hill wasted no time targeting his next fight after falling short at UFC 300. Hill's UFC comeback fight didn't go according to plan at UFC 300 as he lost to Alex Pereira by first-round knockout. Pereira floored Hill with a left hook and ground and pound to retain the UFC light heavyweight title. UFC 300 was Hill's first fight since vacating the light heavyweight title due to injury in 2023. He suffered a torn Achilles just weeks after defeating Glover for the belt at UFC 283. Despite the knockout loss, Hill seemed to take defeat in stride and is already discussing his next UFC appearance. He doesn't plan on taking a lot of time off and has big ambitions for his next fight. In a recent tweet, Hill called out Procházka just hours after UFC 300. Here is what he said: "I dared to be great against adversity and against a great challenge and came up short at the highest level in the world. I answered the call twice on short notice to fight for a championship that most will never fight for. On to the next, Procházka, let's make it happen." Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Your dedication and support fuel our passion to bring you the latest and greatest in the MMA world. If you enjoyed today's news, please give us a thumbs up and share it with fellow MMA fans. Remember to subscribe to stay in the loop with daily MMA updates. We've got a lot of exciting news, interviews, and analysis coming your way every single day. Your engagement helps us grow and serve the MMA community even better. Once again, thank you for being an integral part of our daily MMA journey.